Greg and Richard, right here on Talking Red.
Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast. This is an episode of two halves, as we will review yesterday's trip to Newcastle and then preview the visit of Arsenal on Wednesday night. I'm your Talking Reds host, Greg Oram, along with my fellow Forest fanatic from across the Atlantic, Richard Spray.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're such a wonderful crowd. We'd like to play a little tune for you. It's one of my personal favorites. And I'd like to dedicate it to a young man who doesn't think he's seen anything good today.
Richard Spray, this one's for you.
I heard that you were feeling ill. Headache, fever, and a chill. I came to help restore your pluck, 'cause I'm the nurse who likes to...
Grace! Hey, so we better, Kennedy, so we better.
When Cameron was in Egypt's land, let my Cameron go.
You realize if we played by the rules right now, we'd be in gym?
You forgot the. He's gonna keep calling me. He can keep calling me.
That
was fantastic.
I've got all of
amazing.
it. I will literally. Your intro will end up being about 5 minutes long, so you're going to get a Ferris intro like you had today, and there'll be another Ferris. There's going to be about probably 3 or 4 Ferris intros on the way that you'll have. I've picked up on the Ferris Bueller thing because it's one of my favourite all-time films. And now you said the other day it's yours too. So we're both feeling rather ill though, because I'm the croakiest man alive again, and you're not feeling too well either. But are you okay, Mr. Spray?
I'm good. Yeah, doing all right. Thank you.
Ready for this one?
Morning.
Good morning. Right. Okay. It was a third successive away defeat yesterday as Forest gave themselves too much to do after conceding 4 goals in 11 first half minutes against a Newcastle side that very nearly got clawed back in a much improved second half display from the Reds, which saw the game finish 4-3 to the Geordies. Still plenty to be positive about, or are Forest's newfound defensive frailties going to derail the European dream? Arsenal are up next, and with their struggles in front of goal, is this a great opportunity for the Tricky Trees to re-establish their top 4 credentials? Here with us to mull it all over, we have Raf The Random Pundit and Statman Danscape.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
I'm a Statman.
I'm not afraid.
You will be. You will be.
So we did I've been ill, not been at my best. So a regurgitated intro for the boys. But Raf and Dan are with us. How you doing, Raf?
Good. Yeah, I know. Well, emotional roller coaster, but hey ho, that's been the last 25 years. So what's new? But actually, probably in a much better mental place than I was, let's just say, at halftime yesterday.
And Dan, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I'm a little bit miserable about that one. Yeah, I'd like to get off the roller coaster now and go back to the 1-0 wins and stuff like that, please.
Yeah. Richard has just had a few computer issues. He's coming back on again momentarily. So those of you that are watching won't see him in a moment, but Rich will be back. So Raf, I'll start with you then. just kind of give us your general thoughts on what we saw yesterday before we really get into it.
Yeah, so look, on balance, if you just say 4-3, and if you tell me that beforehand, I would have been, well, do you know what, that's not the worst. But I am massively concerned that since the Liverpool game on the 14th of January, we have not been able to defend. It's that simple. And I don't know where our elite defence has gone, but it's evaporated. And if we want any chance of getting European places, because there is now a massive chasing pack, we need to get back to basics. And like Dan was saying, 1-0s, please, barman, every single day of the week will do us absolutely fine. Now, it is tempered if we look at who we have been playing since then actually, you know, it's, although there is a Southampton in there is an Exeter in there, and those still were not particularly good defensive performances either. So for me, that's what I'm taking out of this, is there is a fundamental reset that needs to be done with the defence if we need to carry on. That's right.
Yeah, Richard's back with us. Good to have you back, Richard. Technical hitches do happen. Don't forget, if you're watching along in the comments, let us know you're here. We will say hello if we can. And liking and subscribing is a thing that we will always encourage. So please do like the video. Please do subscribe to Talking Reds if you haven't already. We are on the pathway to try and get to 2,000 subscribers. So please help us along with that. Danscape, you said you were feeling a bit miserable still, and I can definitely empathise with that. Just want to kind of take us back to team and formation, really, at the start of the match. No Danilo in the squad, so your comments on that would be interesting. And also your comments on the team and the formation he went with. What did you think when the team came out?
I think it was the team that everyone was asking for, pretty much. Yeah. I don't think anyone would have disagreed with that selection. Formation was what everyone wanted to go back to. I think Danilo missing is sort of, you know, not necessarily a surprise given his return to full football intensity over these last couple of weeks. But obviously, I'd hoped he was available to be part of the team, definitely, and he might have added something. But I don't think anyone would have complained at that team selection, and I don't think anyone would have seen that first half coming, especially once we go obviously 1-0 up, as to quite how quickly we were taken apart. And I think, you know, general thoughts on that first half is just that it was so reminiscent of the second half against Bournemouth. And I think part of that is the way we set up the midfield, the way we set up that side of the pitch with Dominguez, Aina, Milenkovic. I think that's becoming a weakness because both those teams just absolutely tore us apart down that side of the pitch. So that's what worries me. That's why I'm a bit miserable, is because we haven't sort of addressed that problem. And the lineup and everything seemed fine, but there's clearly, it seems to me, a weakness on that right-hand side at the minute that we've got to address. And that's, you know, we just seem to have lost our identity from where we were. I don't know if it's because we're trying to go toe-to-toe with teams and we're trying to get on the front foot and we're trying to press 10 yards higher up and stuff. But once you go 1-0 up, you just think, right, this is Forest. This is what we've been this season. We can frustrate them, and then, you know, it doesn't happen that way.
Yeah. So the first half of this pod, we're going to be looking at the Newcastle game, conscious of time. And we could get really carried away by going into all the ins and outs of every part of the game. We're not going to do that. There's been plenty said on different pods and different platforms since the game finished yesterday. We'll have our say on it in the way we're going to say it, which is, Richard, just kind of, I guess, Callum Hudson-Odoi comes back into the starting 11, which was what we all wanted because we know his value. And he capitalises on a loose throw-in and a mistake. And all of a sudden, on the 6 minutes, we're 1-0 up. Just kind of talk us through that moment and where your head was once we'd gone into the lead.
Yeah, we didn't look too engaged, I think, right off the bat. And then when that moment happened, it was kind of a shock, right? I think it even shocked them considerably because, as you pointed out, we took advantage of a moment where they were lapsing a little bit mentally and gave us the ball in an advantageous position. And of course, Callum does what Callum does, which is he kind of, like Raf said, when he gets into that middle part of the park, he just looks like he could be lethal. And I tend to kind of agree with him, even as much as I'm one of the biggest fans of Morgan Gibbs White, I feel like, on the planet. The way Callum operates, just in terms of his ability to shield the ball, as well as just being so adept at just putting players in bad positions on the opposition, He just, I mean, and he picked the most perfect spot to place that ball. And he is such an integral part, and we've talked about it frequently as you referenced, but the quality that he brings, even if he doesn't always score or get an assist, it's just the way that he occupies space and creates problems and mismatches for other teams and draws players to him. That's so valuable as well. There's just a lot of layers that he offers for us as a club. So yeah, it was great to see that moment. And it genuinely I thought, okay, here we go. We're gonna see a script flip a little bit. Now we can dig in. Now we can play a little bit more controlled and really create problems for them and kind of put the pressure back on them. But it just sort of immediately transitioned, or at least within a couple of minutes, it transitioned again and just didn't feel like we were gaining control of the match whatsoever. And just gonna, as Dan pointed out, it was very much like the Fulham or Bournemouth match, where we just didn't seem like we were completely locked in at all points. So I'd really hope that would be a tide turner, but it didn't turn out to be the case in the first half.
So we've gone 1-0 up, and we have been the team that's gone ahead in a lot of games. And the early call from Morato was floating around the WhatsApp group jokingly. But what I wanted to see was obviously us, dig into our positions and hold our places and hold our nerve. But it seemed like we then encountered self-capitulation, implosion, and any other kind of negative adjective you can think of. So 4 goals for Newcastle in 11 crazy minutes. Rather than kind of go through each goal, we've all seen the goals. We all know what happened. Raf, kind of give us your summary of that mad 11 minutes. Kind of pick out a few moments, if you like, as to what happened on a certain goal. For example, Miley was given a load of space, wasn't he, to score his goal? A couple of deflections off of Murillo went on another day, would have gone our way and gone out, etc. So was that possibly the worst 11 minutes of Forest season so far, Raf?
It just was PTSD from back in the day when one goal went in, another goal will go in like pretty much straight away. And I thought that was eradicated from our DNA. Now, a lot of people might be going, you know what? Gordon dived for the first free kick, so that should never have happened. Questionable versus Wolves when Aina's handball wasn't given in the Wolves game for a very similar thing a Wolves defender did. There are many ifs and buts, but I was saying it's coming. Like the goal was coming, and lots of goals were coming. So if they didn't come from there, they would have gone in anyway. Defense was. I've never seen Milenkovic rattled. He was rattled. And when that is happening, something bad is happening. And positions, there was no, what makes Forest brilliant, and all of the analysis is done, is organisation. And it's 2 banks of organisation. The back bank wasn't even tight and operating, let alone a totally porous second bank in front of it. When you have that close to us scoring 1-0 and us having 2 defenders against 4, what on earth is going on? Like, for some reason, we decided to high press at 1-0 for some reason. When have we done that before? Like, I don't know what was going on. Something was very, very bizarre. And as soon as the second goal in, heads just started going absolutely everywhere. And you blinked. I mean, 4 goals in 11 minutes. Now, what we can say as a positive is there were 4 goals in 11 minutes. And outside of that 11 minutes, actually, we go to the second half and everything was a lot better. Although you could say that Newcastle had given up by that point. But it's that microcosm that really, really, really concerns me. And it dials back to the fact that I do not understand where our defensive organisation has gone since the middle of January. And that's the bit that really, really, really concerns me. And we're flipping the script from when we were in December and we were going, the defence is why we're winning games and the attack needs to step up to the plate and score more goals. They don't really seem to have a problem scoring goals at the moment. We're actually scoring quite a lot. Is that actually the problem? Is that why we're scoring? Because we're flooding forward and actually they're not being so good at the back? If so, heart attack, can we please just reset back to basics of what we're good at? And that was kind of in summary, it was going to happen from the way that we were set up. And you could nitpick why those goals went in, but others would have gone in if those didn't.
Any complaints, Danscape, with the Einer handball?
Yeah, probably. I feel like I just feel like, I mean, the judgment is basically that he's deliberately making his body bigger to block that ball. And I just think it's so quick and he's jumping anyway. I don't think it's unrealistic when you're jumping to have your hands somewhere like that. You know what I mean? Like, what else are you going to do? You're literally otherwise got to jump like that. So I think it's a harsh one, but I can see why it's given. It is a 50-50, but I think it's a harsh one to kind of spend so long having to watch like 400 replays to decide. I think generally with handballs, you can tell straight away if it's a handball. You can tell by players' reactions and things like that. And I think that was like, yeah, it's a harsh one. So I have a little bit of a complaint with it. But at that moment, we were all over the shop, and it was all, again, down that side of the pitch. And it just seemed like it was absolute flashback to the promotion season when we'd have these 10 minutes of just chaos and penalties and, you know, deflections going in and all that sort of stuff. And you could definitely make a case that Newcastle were lucky with a couple of those other goals going in, but then you'd say that we kind of got lucky against Fulham with a couple not going in, and these things even themselves out, whatever. But you know, you can't give teams that much shots inside your penalty box. What we've been great at is making teams shoot from outside the box, and then in that one, including the penalty, most of their shots were all inside the penalty area, which is it's just a recipe for disaster.
I've said it before, the warning signs were there against Wolves away. We won that game 3-0, but you know, think back to that game and the amount of good chances that they didn't score. And then, of course, the second half against Southampton saw Forest have a bad second half after going 3-0 up. You know, so the issues defensively have started to creep in a little bit. And so what can we say about that? Who's to blame on that front, Richard? I mean, we're all huge fans of all four of them. No one is you know, too good for criticism, though. And Ola Aina, I guess, is in the spotlight, don't you think?
He's definitely one of them. I think by virtue of him playing as well as he's played all season long, he's been one of the most consistent and effective players that we've had. And to Raf's statement, that back line, he being probably one of the best that we've seen thus far this season in that line. And when you start to see him suddenly, you know, get 4 or 5 out of 10 performances, that's just alarming, because it having that kind of consistency and that ability to rely on that week in and week out has to breed confidence for the rest of the you know, the back defense, basically. I mean, it has to give them the ability to feel like, okay, if we're gonna get carved up in any way, we're not going to see it come through that, because he's just so good as a one-on-one defender. And there's just a weird, I don't know if it's just fatigue, I don't know if it's a combination of both mental and physical fatigue, because he has been playing nonstop. But it's just, there's these isolated moments of what seems like, and I hate to put it in these terms because he's not the kind of guy that I think just doesn't want to give his maximum effort per se, but it looks casual. It looks slower than normal. He's always been very smooth, and it seems like there's this effortless athleticism with him. And it just seems as though recently, at least the matches where we've lost by a pretty decent margin, he's not quite as quick to get over, quick to sort of hold up play and keep them at bay. It's just been odd. And even on moving forward, there's been times where he just doesn't look quite as sharp. I mean, I think even Raf, I know he's your best, he's your favorite player. There's been moments where you said he's just not on it. There's just something odd going on with him. And so that's just one of, I think, a multitude of things. You can't really necessarily point to him exclusively. I think it's just a holistic problem, because the tactics and the formations are not changing. Maybe that's a bad thing in some instances in terms of whatever the context might be, the other opposing teams that we're playing. But generally speaking, I can't imagine the structure and the plan is that much different, and that Nuno's not trying to implement something. I just wonder at times if we're just not playing within the confines of the plan, and the execution on an individual performance level is just not there. I don't know what that is. I can't speak to a specific thing. It just seems as though, unfortunately, when we do play bad, it's not just a certain subset of players. It's everyone not playing to the level they're capable of playing simultaneously, which is frightening, especially in that defensive unit. As Raf stated, it's just bizarre to me that all of a sudden Milenkovic, who to me has always been one of the most capable and or consistent and or controlled footballers, not look like himself. Murillo, by virtue of that, not look like himself, and trying to do too much and play passes that he shouldn't play, and not getting those blocks in on shots that he normally gets. It's just a strange dynamic right now that I don't know if we completely have an answer for, other than, as Raf stated, just getting back to what we do well and making it, simplifying the game plan a little bit.
I want to say hi to Big Arn. He says, morning Reds, still on track for Europe, Champions League, still a possibility. He says, I fancy us versus the Arsenal on Wednesday. Keep the faith, hold on tight, enjoy the ride. Absolutely. We are going to enjoy the ride as well. Steve-O's with us. How many touches for Callum Hudson-Odoi would Alanga in the first half? Yes, the goal, but hard to justify two wingers if they just defend all half. Interesting on that one. Bruce is with us as well. Says the open play goals and the set piece goal that shouldn't have been given. It's not bitter. We're 23 Forest all over. Ball watching and flat-footed defenders. We seem to have it in our DNA, Raf, over the years. No matter who is in the squad, no matter who the manager is, no matter what league we're in, there's something in the Forest DNA that it has got implosion written all over it. We have it in us that we're so used to seeing it from teams down the years. All of a sudden, they have a mad 5 minutes or a mad 11 minutes, as it was yesterday. What's going to happen? Are we going to see anyone coming out of the team, do you think? I mean, we're going to get into the Arsenal selection a bit later on, but, looking at the bench options and the wider squad options, does it kind of maybe magnify that we perhaps a bit limited, more limited than we thought?
It galls me to say it, but I do think it's the right call. That I think Marino needs to come in, Williams needs to play, and Aina needs to have a rest. And look, I'm not going to get on Aina's back, and yet his lackadaisical style does draw the ire from people just because it looks like he does not care. But you saw flashes of brilliance from him yesterday, of like taking on 4 players and still having the ball and everything else as well. Very kind of Callum Hudson-Odoi-esque. But if you look at it, like in terms of volume, other than Sells, Aina has played the most minutes of any player that we have. And if you look at Nico Williams, Ola's played 25 and a bit games worth, right? And Nico has played, I think 16, I think it was, if I was looking, nearly 17 games. So he's load shared with Marino quite a lot, and that's why they're fresher. So I do think, is this the game to do it? I don't know, but potentially it's time for a bit of load share and Aina to come out. I think that's probably the one. Plus, that's a decent point by Sarah, actually. Yeah, and I think, being knackered and probably not having your best performances because you're knackered. And if you think about what those fullbacks are doing as operating as wing backs quite a lot of the time, and all the breaks that we've got, they cover so much distance, and him playing the most amount of minutes as well. I just think he needs a bit of a break. And what Sarah says, that follows logically. Then I think we have a look at where else. I don't think Morato comes in. I think we just persist with Milenkovic and Murillo. That sorts the wing, and then the fullbacks out. Then it's the midfield option. It's still Anderson +1 as far as I'm concerned. I really want Morgan Gibbs-White to be put into a 3-person midfield with someone else. I think Dominguez works better in a 3 in midfield anyway. And then have Callum Hudson-Odoi and Alanga. Callum had a good game, actually, right, to be honest. And other than 2 really bad things that Alanga did, he actually had a good game. Tap in with his head, or even just throw your body at the ball and it will just go in. Like, what is this kung fu kick thing to try and get the ball in? It's just ridiculous. Head loss moment. Also, you have Burn isolated. Why are you not taking him on and just burning on the outside of him and then just getting into the box? Those 2 things were bad. But other than that, his defensive work was excellent. He was tracking back and really trying to help out. 2 of them you're not going to drop Wood. So actually, We'll get onto the Arsenal formation, but I don't think there's much change. And I think Ola's the only one that potentially gets sacrificed to freshen things up. Plus, maybe get Yates in because he actually had a good game when he came in.
So, second half, Danscape, obviously a lot better from a Forest point of view. Just sum up that second half for us, and what positives can we take away from that into Wednesday?
It was good to see the attitude was still there. It's good to see that everyone was still playing as a team in that second half. There was no real head drop or anything like that. It looked like we sort of believed that we can get something out of the game, which is good to see, because you need that in these tough moments. I don't think you can take too much in terms of how it applies to any other game, because it's just not reality, is it, for a team to be 3 goals up and then you're just pretty much attacking for 45 minutes. So there's, it was good to see that we got at them. We mostly got at them from set pieces, which we looked dangerous from, and they looked really vulnerable on, which again is kind of annoying that we were so far out the game that we couldn't exploit that to kind of get something from it. We created a few from open play, but it was mostly those set plays that Newcastle just didn't seem to be able to deal with, and we were in the right place at the right time. But overall, yeah, it was good to see. And I think the second half showed our game plan in that we could step forward that extra 10, 15 yards and put the pressure on, and Hudson-Odoi and Elanga were closing people down quickly, and it worked because Newcastle weren't really trying to commit the bodies forward and get behind us into the spaces that we left, whereas in the first half we did the same thing, but Newcastle were obviously trying to basically exploit the space we left. And I think to some extent, from that first half display, we've been a little bit harsh on Aina and Milenkovic, because I think the problem is what's in front of them and the fact that Dominguez is vacating that space, which then leaves them exposed and having to cover too much pitch and things like that. And I think if I was looking at a common theme through some of these defeats, it would be Dominguez pushing on too far and leaving that hole. And that's what didn't happen in the second half, because Newcastle weren't trying to really get into that space. They were letting us push on, and they were saying, right, well, we'll defend our box. And they didn't do a great job of it. But, at the end, I did think we would nick it. I really thought we'd actually somehow get the fourth goal and get a point despite everything. But obviously, in hindsight, you can't say that you're expecting to get a point from a 4-4 draw and see that as a good performance overall. But yeah, I did think we might nick it.
Well, we gave ourselves too much to do, really. I mean, if you're going to go into the second half 4-1 down, Richard, you've got an uphill battle. Quick couple of questions for you. Were you surprised that Nuno didn't make any changes at halftime? And we've talked about Forest's style of play being that low possession, counter-attacking, offensive style. And my worry was, do we have a plan B? When it really comes down to the nitty-gritty, do we have it in us to press teams back and go on the attack? And I felt we showed in the second half that we can do that. Maybe Newcastle took a step back because they've got that 3-goal advantage, but at the same time, it's takes 2 to tango, doesn't it? If they're going to step back, we've still got to take the initiative and come forward. So were you surprised that Nuno didn't make any changes? And are you, with Danscape and me, do you think another 5 minutes at the end and we'd have scored again?
I was a little bit surprised by the lack of change at the halfway point, just seemingly because we hadn't shown anything to that at that stage, and we looked like we needed some sort of shifting around to try to get more, get more involvement. But at the same time, upon reflection, I think he did a really good thing, because these guys that came out in that second half, that were there in the first half, historically, maybe you can rotate, as you pointed out, the Anderson +1, I think was what Raf said. That is pretty much what our starting 11 looks like. That's what we would probably say is our best starting 11. And so when you start sort of chipping away at that and reacting too quickly, are you giving into the moment and not playing the long game psychology of knowing that these are the leaders of the team, these are the guys that have gotten us to this point, and so why not infuse some confidence and belief in them that they can turn it around? Maybe I'm looking at this completely off base, but I think there's some merit to what Nuno did there from an actual psychological standpoint, and I think he was rewarded for that. They showed why they were going to show the character, and then and the necessary sort of transition to a team that knows how to play football, knows how to play together, more importantly, and play cohesive football. And so they did that, and that was a great thing to see, because we're going to need that against teams coming up, because we know what Arsenal are. They're a bit down right now. We're going to talk through that, but you got Man City coming. I mean, you've got other hurdles to try to traverse on the horizon, and so having those guys play to the level that they know they can, and have that belief again, and that confidence again, was a good thing. I agree with you. I think if we had maybe even 3 more minutes, we probably could have done something, because as Dan pointed out, we got an awful lot of set pieces right at the end. We were putting so much pressure and stress on them, whether that's them sort of kind of reverting back to feeling like we've got this game in hand, we don't need to put in the effort at this stage, or not. I thought we did what we needed to do to take advantage of that, regardless of where their headspace was. So it is good, because it carries over some confidence into the next match, that we have the ability to do something offensively and defensively, to maintain shape, to do what we know we can do as a team, and that's to create challenges for the opposition, both on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I think it gives Nuno food for thought. I was quite pleased that the team reacted. There were no changes, and he's almost like, well, look, you've got us into this mess. You're going to go and get us out of this mess. And they did react to that. And I was quite pleased with Yates's involvement, obviously coming on and scoring. We had a couple of chances in the second half with Milenkovic and Murillo headers that pinged wide. There was that moment you talked about, Raf, when Elanga surely should have maybe tried to head the ball rather than do a high karate kick into it. So there were lots of good things going on from a Forest point of view that we must take into the Arsenal game. I hope that they will come away from the game reflecting more on the attacking that we can do, rather than the sort of like the defending in the first half. But Big Arne says he's not convinced myself, but just wondering, have we got above ourselves? Do we need to be more defensive against the better teams? Be hard to beat, look to nick it. And that's possibly the way that we need to look at it on Wednesday night. But we will talk more about Forest after we take this very short break.
The Cheese Trader, based on Grape Lane in York, is a cheese lover's paradise. Home to some wonderful specialty cheeses, relishes and chutneys, and also with a fantastic street food menu. Try their loaded fries or posh cheese on toast. It'll be the best you've ever had. Owned by Forest fan Stu Freestone, the Cheese Trader proudly sponsors Talking Reds. Quote Talking Reds every time to get 10% off your order. The Cheese Trader and Talking Reds, the perfect cheesy mix.
Perfect cheesy mix indeed. The Cheese Trader, you know what to do. Scott from Australia says, "G'day." He says he thinks we need to go back to basics, solid defensively, the whole team putting in a shift. Performance is more important than the result against the Gooners. Thanks, Scott. And that's Scott Terry from the Nottingham Forest Australia supporters Facebook group. So yeah, let's think about personnel. Let's think about Arsenal. Let's think about team shape. Let's go straight into it, Richard, with on the FOTMOB. So this is the team that started yesterday. Do you expect there to be changes? And if so, what are you thinking?
I think we discussed the possibility. I mean, you're always going to keep Wood up top. You're going to have Hudson-Odoi on the left, Lang on the right, Gibbs White in the 10, Anderson in that 8, and that playing that box-to-box role. The question becomes, do you rotate out Dominguez? Do you consider rotating out Aina just to give him, as Raf pointed out, I don't think he doesn't care. I don't think he's not up for it in most matches. But I do believe there's some fatigue there. And so could you maybe move Nico over to Aina's spot on the right, which is, I think, what I would do, just to give him that opportunity to kind of reset a little bit. We've seen some of those moments with Elanga and Hudson-Odoi both coming off the bench at certain intervals, not always because of injury, because they've just been logging a lot of time on the pitch and they need an opportunity. And in some cases, they needed to get a little bit more confidence back and not feel like there's so much pressure on them to have to perform and being such a, the be all and end all in terms of our success. But having Aina take a step back just for maybe at least a half and maybe even the match itself, but be on the bench if needed. So I would say move Nico over to the right and put Moreno in on the left. And then personally, I'm kind of leaning towards Yates coming in for Dominguez to see what that does. I know we don't want to pigeonhole him and make him the away match disruptor and Housery, king. But I do think there's something to having that kind of consistency and that steadiness that we know he brings. He's a little bit different than Anderson in terms of how he operates. He's not a true 6. He's not going to defend in the same way that maybe Sangari would. But I know Sangari is he's not quite there yet and ready to start. So having someone that offers something a bit different to what Anderson does, even if Yates a little bit more advancing, I think would be a great way to sort of balance out that midfield and provide some coverage to that area of the pitch. So right now, Wood on the up top, Hudson-Odoi on the left, Gibbs White in the 10, Alanga on the right, Anderson in the 8, Yates playing that pseudo 6 role, Moreno on the left, Murillo, Milenkovic in the middle, and then Nico Williams on the right.
Yeah. Raf, anything different from you, or are you ready for Aina to drop out, for example?
Yeah, and if I'm saying Aina should drop out, then he really should drop out, because I'll be the last person to drop him. It's like Rich saying, let's drop Gibbs White. Like, it's like that severe. But I do think he does need a rest, and I will come on to why this is actually probably a good game for him to drop out from. It's weird we're saying we're playing Arsenal, but actually we can be a bit light on our fullbacks. But this is actually a game ahead of Man. I want him to have a rest ahead of Man City, because I think we need Ola back from Man City, and I need him rested for that. What I would say, which was super frustrating, and Steve-O has mentioned this, and we talk about this on X as well, and we agree, I really want Gibbs White in a midfield 3. You're playing against a 3, you need 3 in midfield. What happens? We get overrun. It's not rocket science. It's what happens at Newcastle. It's what every time we get spanked is because we're overrun in midfield. And so Gibbs White should actually be part of, so do Christmas tree basically, 4-3-2-1. And Hudson-Odoi then operates more the traditional 10, and Alanga floats around being an absolute nuisance wherever he finds pockets of space and finds people that he can match up against. But I've been saying this for a while. Whoever's in the 10 spot needs to score goals, right? It can't just be Wood. They need to score goals. And point in case was Hudson-Odoi's goal, again, from what was the 10 spot yesterday, right? And he's got the ability to be able to score and pick up the ball. Gibbs White's skill is getting the ball in transition and releasing players in the best possible way into the spaces to find Hudson-Odoi and find Alanga. So the ergo logically, we play with 3 in midfield. We clog up and we have a proper line in front of the defence. We'll come on to Arsenal's possession, but then we can release Hudson-Odoi and Alanga. Gibbs White can ball carry. Anderson can ball carry if they want out the midfield to get things going and then join the attack. That's absolutely fine. But we do need 3 in midfield. And until the defence sorts itself out, we should be playing 3 in midfield.
So that's the Christmas tree formation now. I put Anderson, Gibbs White and Yates across as a 3. Hudson-Odoi, Alanga dropping in behind Wood. Danscape, where are you at on formation and personnel? And let's also remember that Danilo wasn't in the squad yesterday. Has he been left out entirely just to kind of safeguard an injury, or is he just being left out entirely because he's going to play against Arsenal?
No idea on that one. I would assume he's left out entirely because he's picked up a knock or something. I would say, because otherwise he'd be in the squad, he'd be in the bench. You know, I don't think you'd leave him entirely out of the team just because you prepare for the next one. You just wouldn't bring him on unless you absolutely had to. So I think he's probably picked something up. So he's probably unlikely to feature. I hope he does feature. I think I'm probably not in a position where I'm saying drop Aina. I don't think it's entirely down to fatigue. I do think both fullbacks look a bit sort of devoid of ideas in some moments and things, but I don't think I'm ready to kind of throw him under the bus for that entire performance. I think for me, it's very much more about the control in midfield, the leadership on that side of the pitch. I don't think that's a good sort of trio / quad. What's the quadrupo something? 4 of them with Milenkovic, Aina, Alanga, Dominguez. I just don't think it works that well on that side of the pitch, especially away from home. So I think I'm probably sticking with Aina. Now, the one thing that's interesting, and I really don't have that many clear thoughts on what we do for this game, but I remember when we lost to Bournemouth, Nuno said, look, after a defeat like that, the team wants to feel solid. They want to feel like they've got that extra protection, and that's why he went for the back three against Brighton. Is that it was a response to that. And I think when we played Arsenal last time, there was definitely calls after that game saying, "Oh, we should have gone to the back three for that game," because they were sort of terrorizing us around the edge of our box. They, on the corners of the penalty area, just outside and cutting inside. They were really causing lots of problems. Now that was with Saka, that was with some other players that they're now missing that are more of a threat. But I can definitely see an argument for us again to start this game with the back three to say, let's just be solid. Let's completely block those spaces, because we're not going to dominate possession. We're not going to dominate the ball. What we've got to do is fill the gaps around our penalty area where we've started letting teams actually get through on that right-hand side of the pitch with Aina, Milenkovic and Dominguez. So I think I just want the extra body on that side of the pitch.
Oh, I've got a great challenge for Dan. I've got a great challenge for Dan. And some things that he puts up though is, if you're doing that, Morato comes in and potentially Yates goes out. Arsenal, where their goals coming from, set pieces, who can head the ball better?
Well, I'm not saying Yates does necessarily have to come out.
Morato can ask you who comes out. Does Anderson come out? Or does Alanga come out? I mean, and we'll play. What are you thinking?
I wonder whether Hudson-Odoi is going to be fit enough to play 90 minutes in this game straight after that one, coming back from injury. So it might be that it's Gibbs, White, Alanga that are playing as the sort of two floating players further up. And then I would go back to Yates and Anderson in that midfield, because I think that has been a solid pairing for us. I think it's a good balance because Anderson can push on, he can get on the ball. Yates is capable of a bit of leadership in there to just try and slow the game down, because that's what we lacked. It was like so obvious in that game against Newcastle what was happening. They highlighted it on all the match of the day and things, from minute one, that's what they were doing. But nobody on the pitch seemed to adjust for us and say, hang on a minute, I'm just going to sit here and watch this space for a while till things calm, till we work out what's going on. We just kept charging on and pushing on. So I think Yates at least brings a bit of control, hopefully, and leadership, being captain and everything, to say, okay, we're just going to, let's organise properly. And I don't know whether playing wing backs helps Aina and Williams or not in terms of fitness. If we're saying they're tired and they need a break, I don't know whether this means they start covering more of the pitch. But Arsenal aren't a team that cross the ball a lot. They'll want to play around as opposed to just get out wide and cross the ball in, especially with no striker. So I think this would be my choice overall.
I would take Morato out, honestly, like Raf said, because I think they're one of the best set piece scoring teams in the league, right? So you've got to have someone like Bali, who is so adept in the air, and he's good enough, I think, to keep things controlled or compact or whatever other word you want to leverage there. But in terms of how he's playing when they're starting to build towards transition or counterattacking or just building through open play. Yeah, that three at the back, if you're going to do it, I would go Bali, just because I don't know. Morato to me is such a liability.
King Bali.
Well, me personally, I don't think the back three for this game is the option that I would go to. I think that we've flip-flopped a little bit between, the back three is really good, and it's, and I've been guilty of that as well. And I just think that we play our best football at home in the 4-2-3-1. We have had good games with the back three. Steve-O says in the comments that we were picked apart against Fulham with the back three, which is quite true. But I think at home against Arsenal, then I would want to see the back four. And then we can go to that. We can switch to that later on if we need to, like we have done successfully so many times. That's kind of been our MO that's been quite successful. So me personally, I want to see, I think Aina will play. I wouldn't be against him dropping out for the reasons that have been stated. But Aina and Williams and Milenkovic and Murillo stay. Yates and Anderson in the midfield, and Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs, White, Alanga and Wood. That to me would be my team. Yates has got to come in. The one player that no one's mentioned is a player that I'm not a massive fan on, and that's Sangare. It's like Big Arn says he's agreeing with me that not quite sure about Sangare, not quite ready to trust him yet. Any of you think that Sangare is in with a shout?
Yeah.
I've started, I mean.
Nuno likes him.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
I think again, it's the kind of game where we're just not going to have a lot of the ball. We need to shield the defense. It's not, the defense don't do all of the defending. So it's about the space and having the extra body there and not committing more players forward. I think what Sangare can offer is that he's used to that role, and he's the most natural in that role of just shielding the defense. So there is definitely a thought in my mind as well that he can play, especially if we are going to go for a midfield three. I would have him as the central of those three, so that the other two can push on, and they can guarantee that he's going to stay back and protect the defense.
Okay, so we wanted to bring you the opposition preview and also the stat pack, but Richards was kicked out earlier, and so we have them there. There we go. So, Raf, we are going to come to you now for you to give us your opposition reports.
Send them back to East London! Send them back!
I hope anybody's not stupid enough to write us on.
Raf, tell us about Arsenal.
No, that believe right there. Good, Ted Lasso. I do believe actually we will win this game. I do. And it is for this reason that Arsenal are decimated and devoid of ideas of how to score except for set pieces. The Man City game, which you see is the latest, is the oldest of the three games. That is when they have Havertz, they have Martinelli, right? And those two being out, and you kind of look at Havertz, and he's not actually the best player in the entire world. Martinelli is very, very tricky, but you remove the two of them out, then you get Nwerny as well, and he came off injured in the West Ham game, so he's then been pulled out. So that's effectively three of their front line that probably, I would say, Nwerny he's a maybe not. We don't know. Probably not going to play. But if we look at the rest of it, it's very, very predictable. So I don't think, and sounds very, very similar to what we said about Newcastle, very, very wedded to a 4-3-3, right? They will play 4-3-3. And what's going to be at the back, I think, again, will be fairly predictable. You're going to have Raya in goal. You're going to have Timber as your right back. You're never going to change Saliba and Gabriel as your two central defenders because they are flipping awesome. And Skelly isn't even going to be an option because he'll be banned for the game anyway. So Calafiori will be playing left back, because the only other injury that they do have in either their midfield or their back line is to Tomiyasu. So he's not fit enough to play at that left back. So it will be Calafiori who'll be playing left back. You then look at the midfield three, and I can't see them changing that. You've got the powerhouses of Odegaard, Partey, and Rice that are going to be there. So I do think their goalkeeping, their defence, their midfield, highly, highly predictable, which again was why I've got such a bee in my bonnet about the level of predictability and why we did what we did at Newcastle, where you know exactly what is coming. And it's even more predictable with who's going to be in their midfield for it. So I really hope Nuno is prepared on that. If we look at their forwards, really you're going to have Trossard as the person that is their main open play threat is going to be Trossard. The Marino experiment, him having come on for 10 minutes and scored 2 goals against Leicester, was it, when they were really huffing and puffing and couldn't score? And he suddenly was going to be their miracle solution as a 9. It's more a midfielder, I thought, rather than an actual 9. But he was been put in as a 9, and the experiment against the Hammers didn't work. He just didn't work as a 9 at all, and it didn't work. So I don't know if he'll be starting there, but I don't know who else they've got. So because they've got 3 up there, who else are they going to put? Now, I don't know why Sterling has never been trusted. He's evidently not liked by Arteta, and he's not trusted because he's never really been used, even though he did start against Leicester, but then was pulled, even though he can play through the middle and Marino was put as the 9. But I do think we'll probably see Sterling play. Trossard will probably revert to being the 9. You'll have Sterling and then another who will probably be quite youth or something else as well that we put into the attack, just because they need the bodies. To that end, though, what they do have on the pitch from their midfield backwards is a very, very tight unit. When we go to SofaScore, remember we were saying beforehand, and it's probably dropped. I think I didn't look at it again, but we had how many players that we had that were 7 rating of 7+ over the whole season. But Arsenal have 11 of them, right? They're that consistent of where they're doing it. Now, of that 11, you have got Saka and Havertz of that 11. So they're 9 that can play. But weirdly, Havertz, Martinelli, not averaging 7 at all. So the players that are injured, or they're their big names, are they the players that are playing best for them? Nwenry as well, not a 7+ as well. So we'll see who comes in, but they do have really good ability. We do know they're going to have lots of the ball. If we look at West Ham and the plan that West Ham had, it's going to similarly be getting back to the basics of what we do really well. Arsenal had 58% possession against West Ham, okay? But they only mustered, and this is what we need to get back to, they only had 1.22 XG, right, against, and we should get it even lower than that because we've got even less firepower on the pitch. West Ham only scored 1 goal, only needed to score 1 goal, and they had an XG of 1.07. Totally efficient, on the break the entire time, got the job done. And that is the model that we should deploy. Shouldn't try and be fancy and go toe-to-toe with Arsenal. That's not the way to do it. But we know to get back to basics and go for it. They had 20 shots, Arsenal, right? But only 1 big chance. And we need to get back to defending our box in the right way. But it's a big list of who's out. But I think really, if we have a look at it, I don't really want to get more complex, other than the fact of maybe where their threat's going to be coming from. Now, I don't know how they're going to rejostle it, but Odegaard does, even when Saka's not fit, he still starts on the right and Rice starts on the left. But Calafiori and Rice did not have a good game against West Ham. And so although Trossard played pretty well, he was quite isolated and he wasn't getting a huge amount of quality support from behind him. But actually still, Timber and Odegaard are piling down the right-hand side of their right to our left. So whoever's going to be that left-hand side defender is still going to have a huge amount of workload to happen. So potentially having Anderson on our left-hand side, whoever it is going to have to help out quite a lot of basically taking Odegaard out. There's a part of me which kind of wants to put Yates on Odegaard and just be a pest to Odegaard and try and shut that down a bit. But it's still, even without Saka, they still favour their right-hand side in terms of Timber getting forward with Odegaard and trying to cause chaos down there. So that's really what I've got. It's very difficult to predict because the lineup's going to be nothing that they've done beforehand. But we do know the formation that they will have. We know what their midfield is, and we need to get 3 into midfield to deal with it.
Okay. Thanks ever so much, as ever, Raf, for your scouting report on the opposition. Let's have a closer look with Statman.
I'm a Statman.
Fazendo som, Pedrinha Moraes fazendo som, e Pedrinha Moraes fazendo som.
Okay, Daniel's here we go. What have you got, Chris?
On the podcast prediction league, someone did say, in fact, I think it might have been you, was it, Greg? Said Willy Bolly will have 1 big moment before the end of the season. So maybe this is it. Maybe this game is it. On the stats, this is just a comparison of the players, and I think that really all this chart does is show what Arsenal are missing in Saka, who is absolutely miles ahead at the top there in terms of chance creation against any other player that would be on the pitch. So they're missing a big chunk of creativity in him. In terms of the right-hand side and the kind of goal scoring, as usual, Chris Wood miles out in front, which shows what Arsenal have missed all season in not really having that out-and-out striker. But you can see Mikel Merino there is is trying to edge his way towards the right and catch up to where Havertz has been to fill that gap for them. I think he had a good 10 minutes when he first came on in the game where he sort of played up front, but as Rafa said, not that effective against West Ham. And then Odegaard and Rice and Trossard are the kind of three players that are obviously the danger men on that. But they're again below what we've been getting from Gibbs White, Elanga, Hudson-Odoi and Anderson in terms of creativity. So that was just a look at the players there. Home and away kind of record. I suppose Forest's home form is now kind of something that's improved dramatically over the season. Early on in the season, we were worried about the home form, but now if you look at it, our home form is up there. It's kind of, top 4 home form for most elements. The only bit where we drop down is the actual chance creation. We don't create a load of chances at home compared to most teams. We're sort of bottom half on that. But you can see Arsenal's away form, obviously with them being second in the league, for the most part, their away form is the second best away form in the league there. So it's going to be, a tight game, a difficult game. And then if you just flip on to the last one in terms of recent form, this is obviously where, for Forest's point of view, there's too many Forest badges down the bottom of these kind of the league tables. So form-wise, we're now, over the last 30 days, we're the second worst team in the league in terms of form. And Arsenal are still the second best team in the league in terms of form. So let's not get too carried away on that last game against West Ham. We're still playing, a very good team. Goals for, we're actually the best team in the league, scored the most goals over the last 30 days, which is crazy. But as you can see, in terms of goals against, we're now like the fourth worst in the league for that. And again, shots on target against, we're right down the bottom on that still. And the goalkeeping performance after the weekend, because I think Sells only actually got classed as making one save in that whole game against Newcastle. That goalkeeping performance has dropped down, albeit they were deflections and penalties and things like that. So I think there's a little bit of mitigating factor there. But Arsenal, form-wise, pretty much in that top 2 or 3 throughout. And it's just the worry of our defence, as we've talked about, is there in the numbers. And if you got the dream... No.
Yes, I'm going to come to that. So one thing that we haven't looked at recently so much is the European Dream Tracker. And I think it pops up in our group or in our chats, and Paul Morley is good at offering over. Well, in the last 30 years, the team that's currently third has ended up finishing fourth 90% of the time, and the team, all positive stuff. And I'm still have that in my head, thinking it's going to be Forest that are the one that bucks it. And I hope to God it's not. But how are we looking in the European Dream Tracker, Danscape?
Well, unfortunately, this weekend's results were, this one particular result, which is Newcastle picking up 3 points, is not good in terms of where it looks as the final points total now to qualify for any kind of European place is now 66 points, I think. I can't actually see it. It's too small. But it's gone up to 66 points because Newcastle, who were in 7th, have just bumped that total up again in terms of where it's projected to go. So at the start of the season, the European Dream Tracker was, if you can get to 60 points or above, you're going to get a European spot. It's now, because of the way this season's unfolding, it is a 66 points or above. Now, it changes week to week. One result for those teams can swing where that final points total is heading. But at the minute, it's proving to be a very tough season to qualify for Europe all of a sudden. And you can see how tight those lines are in the top in terms of 5th place and 7th place, which obviously you only have to look at the league table now, but it is so incredibly tight. That line has moved up quite significantly just from that one result. So hopefully once we get to our last, we've got eight of our last 10 games are all against bottom half sides. And for us, that's just going to have to be the key part of the season.
It's going to have to be, because that was where we were so good in the first half of the season as well. I don't think we lost to any of the bottom half teams and probably pretty much beat all of them or thereabouts. So I'm feeling still, good. Richard, coming to you, because we're nearly out of time, but not quite. So we've just come off the back of another away defeat at Newcastle. We are going into 2 home games against Arsenal and Man City, which at the start of the season, we probably didn't give ourselves anything in the predictor. I can't even remember. But, now we're going into these games and any points would be good points. What are you hoping for from Arsenal and Man City? We'll put those games together. And, you know, if we don't get anything from those games, if we end up losing both those games, do you really feel like, you know, we could be in danger then of just letting it all slip away and ending up in mid-table, which we would have taken at the start of the season?
If we had performances like we did in the first half against Newcastle and then against Bournemouth and teams of that nature, I think then I would start to worry if we don't get any points, because then it's not just about the loss. It's about how you perpetuate sort of a lack of a level of you know, performance, generally speaking. And so if we do that, I mean, I know a lot of people say performance is what is key. And you know, I just want to see a good performance. And I know that's kind of become somewhat of a mantra, but I have to echo that. I think that's the case because these are very good football teams and we've historically not been able to compete with. And this season's been different, clearly, but at the same time, I think we're in a position where it's not a be all and end all, because as you pointed out, the way the season progresses, and we've got quite a few home games in this spell that can bring some energy and some life to the club, because they've got that fan base there in totality supporting them and providing that energy. But at the same time, I think we don't have to look at it as if you lose these matches and you don't end up collecting any points from them, that somehow that's going to create this sort of exponential sort of downfall and slide down the table. I don't necessarily believe that's the case, but I do want to see a level of performance that have been significantly better than what we've seen second half of Newcastle, just more consistently throughout the game.
We were always going to have a blip. I think I've said it many, many times before. We were always going to lose games. We were always going to go through a period where we'd suffer, because that's what you get in the second part of a season, with maybe players that were really playing above themselves. Maybe just their level drops off. And when those levels drop off a little bit, that's when you start to see mistakes creeping in and teams capitalizing on weaknesses that we never had before. So I'm still feeling optimistic and positive that we can come out of the Arsenal game and the Man City game. I believe that we will get points in either both or maybe just one of those games. And the games that come after that, we go into maybe a much more favourable set of games where you'd expect us to be picking up points. But I just hope that the run of games we've been on and the poor performances in parts of those games isn't going to start rubbing on. I do worry a little bit about the depth. I think we've got some good players that can come in for parts of games, but in terms of changing the starting 11, this Danilo, the injury, we still need to kind of keep an eye on. The original injury, I mean, I'm not suggesting he's got an injury now, because Nuno did suggest that he's fine and ready to play. Sangare still has got a lot of work to do for me, as I've said time and time again, but I'm not writing him off. Absolutely not writing him off. Fully behind all of the players. Big game against Arsenal on Wednesday night. Lots to feel positive for. Home crowd, under the lights. You know, it can change in an instant, okay? We've lost a game this weekend when everyone else around us lost, obviously, apart from the Newcastle game and Villa, you know, getting a win against Chelsea. But, you know, it just goes to show that there are teams out there that are not going to capitalise potentially if we do slip up again against Arsenal. So thank you so much to you guys for being with us. Thanks for everyone joining in the comments. Raf, any closing thoughts before we go?
We're doing predictions.
Yeah, we will do that. We'll do closing thoughts with score predictions. Go for it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so for me, I think and I hope we win 1-0. And this is if you say that you think if we're going to stick within the European places. For the Newcastle game, all I wanted was a performance. A point would have been great, but it was about the performance. That wasn't there in the first half. Second half, it was there. It's all about the performance against Arsenal. If we go back to being solid, we win 1-0. We forget Newcastle, everything's back on track, and it's exactly the way that we should be. If we don't do that, I am very, very concerned, and it's the nature of the performances that are happening that where we are. But 1-0, no concerns, positive mental attitude. We get back to being solid. We hit them on the counter. We win 1-0, and everything is back to happy days.
Thank you very much, Raf. Dan, score prediction and closing thoughts?
Yeah, it's a good chance for a reset, and it's a good chance for one of those games that can be a massive bit of momentum going into the last bit of the season, like Liverpool away was early in the season, and then Villa at home. They were such good results to like spur on the confidence. And so much of football is confidence, and it's these moments and the mood around the place and all that. So massive chance for it. I've done a little piece for the Miss Rolling In fanzine, which is all about 1-0 wins. So, and I think it's going on sale before this game outside the ground and everything. So it would be absolutely poetic, beautiful for us to just get that 1-0 win. So I'm going to predict the 1-0 to Forest.
So you've gone Raf and Dan going with the 1-0 wins. Richard Spray, closing thoughts over in Oklahoma and just score prediction, please.
Yeah, it's kind of trending towards a 1-0 win, just because I felt like it's going to be, even with some deficiencies that they might have up front, it's still going to be a tight game because they, as Raf pointed out, they have so much quality from the midfield back, and so it's going to be a challenge for Chris Wood to get, I think, meaningful sort of impact, given how their back line plays. But yeah, I'm gonna agree with the guys. I think it's a 1-0 gutted out. You know, we play a much better match than we played previously, and sort of infuse a little bit of momentum and confidence, all the words that the boys have used already to kind of get us rolling and getting us on the right trajectory back up on that year above that line on the European Dream Tracker.
Well, three of you saying 1-0 win. So 1-0 to the Arsenal was the saying in the day. So if we can get 1-0 against the Arsenal, then I'll be all for that. I think a clean sheet would be much appreciated. Much, much appreciated. And that's the understatement of the year. Get back to keeping a close shop, no goals against us. I'm going to say 2-0, just to be different. Chris Wood back on the score sheet. He's due a goal. So Chris Wood brace, in fact, Chris Wood to get us up. And hopefully the cat that's on Danscape's shoulder, let's all rub the cat. Let's all rub the cat. Well, I also quickly say I'm delighted to have been invited to go on to the Absolute Football podcast tomorrow. That goes out Tuesday tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. The Absolute Football podcast is an award-winning pod. They won the 2024 Best New Content Creator at the Football Content Awards. So that's chatting about Forest, and that's chatting about all the Premier League games from this weekend. So nice to go on there, represent Talking Reds. So I'll put that out on X through our channel. So any of you that want to catch that, please do tune in as well. It wasn't a great day for us in terms of scoreline, but we came away from St James's Park with maybe more of a kick in our step than we thought we would have after that first half showing. It's all about how we bounce back now, and Forest and this team have shown time and time again that if you write them off, then they will come back to bite you. Pundits are now looking at Forest as maybe going through a patch that sees them drop down the table. I'm looking at Forest now and thinking this is where we show our true colours. Clean sheet, a 2-0 win. Come on, you Reds.
Come join Greg and Richard.